Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Saga Scribe podcast, where we interview authors, editors, and cool people in the lit RPG, fantasy, progression fantasy, and Royal Road space. Today, I'm happy to welcome Erebus Esprit, who I've previously interviewed in text, but I wanted to bring on. Erebus is the writer of Project Tartarus, also working on some other stuff, and Project Tartarus is a great take on the lit RPG genre. So, Erebus, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Is it weird?
It's new. I'll say it's not weird. It's new.
You-
But glad to be in the space. Glad to have the opportunity to chat with you. We've been friends for a good while now, I'd say, and glad to be on the podcast, man. Thanks for having me.
You know what's so funny is that you were literally the first person to reach out for me for an interview. I've made like a random Reddit post, and you were the first comment.
Well, I saw a good idea coming, and I wanted to jump on early.
There you go. There you go. Then I had to ride your coattails. So, Erebus, what's interesting about you, and I do want to bring this up right away, is you published to Amazon first.
Yes, I did. So this was kind of before I really knew about Royal Road or what it was really about, or had a audience or a community to really talk to and get advice from. So I was familiar with Amazon. I was familiar with KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, because I had published with them years ago under a different name, self-published as well. And so I knew how that race worked, and I knew how that fight goes. But I'd heard of Royal Road before. But it had always been like, oh, that's web fiction, that's serial fiction. That's not quite what I write. I write more novels and literary fiction, and there is a distinction between how the stories are told. They're two different mediums. The stories are told in two different ways with two very different styles of pacing. And so I thought at the time that novels and that kind of pacing wouldn't work well on Royal Road because the audience there is more geared towards serial web fiction, stuff that has arcs and goes on for long, long periods of time. And to an extent, there is some truth there, I believe. But I vastly underestimated how successful novels and novel pacing could be on there. And so I started off with Amazon, saw a little bit of success, not as much as I wanted, found the Immersive Ink Discord, joined there, started talking with Phoebe and Fid. And Phoebe actually gave me some great advice. He was like, hey, man, see what you're doing. Let's talk for a little bit. So we talked, and he gave me the advice of take the books down from Kindle Unlimited, which has an exclusivity contract for ebooks. Start posting it to Royal Road to get some eyes on and get some awareness and name recognition out there. And so I took his advice. It's what I did. I started posting, and I think for the large part, it worked. I was able to get a lot of eyes on. I am getting ready to stub on March 8th. I don't know when the podcast is coming out, but
congratulations.
Thank you. So books 1 and 2 are going to be stubbing on Royal Road on March 8th, and they're going to be going back on Kindle Unlimited because I feel that I have I don't want to say peaked, but I've plateaued a little bit on Royal Road. So I know you and I have gone back and forth on whether it actually made Rising Stars or not. You said I was there for like 15 minutes, a couple hours or something. I never saw it.
Yeah, well, you got traffic from there, so it means it made it.
I got one review from the main list of Rising Stars. I got one referral.
There you
so
go.
I will take that, and that is my claim to fame. But no, it was good. I had steady growth for a long time, for several months, and then I plateaued around 500 or so followers, and was getting some good engagement, good reviews and stuff. And I figured at this point, it doesn't look like I'm getting any more growth on Royal Road. So what I decided to do was I would finish out the posting of book 2, and then I would get ready to stub both books 1 and 2, bring them back onto Kindle Unlimited with its exclusivity, and then get ready for book 3 to publish and start that on Kindle Unlimited from the beginning, because I know that something that the Amazon audience, one thing they really hate is when the early books in a series are available on Kindle Unlimited and then the later books in the series are not. And so
I see. Okay.
I had to make a choice between a largely unpaid audience and a paid audience. And in order to do what's best for me and my family, I have to go with what is going to actually sell copies, sell books.
Yeah, and you've shared numbers privately with some of the members. Looking back, what do you think you would do different if you were gonna? I know you're working on stuff. I know you're working on other stories as well. What would you do differently next time?
So things that I would do differently next time is definitely leverage networks. So for a long time, I wrote pretty much by myself. I didn't have a big community to share work with, to talk shop about. I had a couple buddies who also were into writing, but not really taking it as seriously as I was. More of like, this is just something they do for fun. In the meantime, no one who like really wanted to like, I want to do this full time, kind of like I did.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really have that kind of social network, social safety net to kind of fall back on. So I had to really develop a lot of inner resiliency in my writing to be able to write for myself and have that be okay. But now that I've found these amazing and wonderful communities and amazing and wonderful writers to both learn from and share advice with, I can leverage some of those connections to be able to set up things in advance, like shout outs. I can have folks who, if I say, hey, I'm dropping a couple chapters, would someone mind looking them over and giving me feedback? I have people who will willingly do that. And then will be interested enough in it to then go on to Royal Road or novelizing and actually read the stories when they're posted there. So that's been just huge and deeply touching from a personal standpoint.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to watch the communities grow, honestly, because we were there pretty early, right? We were on Immersive Inc. I was like number 30. You were shortly after me, right, in the Discord, and now it's like 1,500 members.
Yes, yeah. So I got there in September, I think it was, of last year. And I think we were at a little bit over 100 members or so, and I was kind of like, I don't know what's going on here. I've joined a couple of the other Royal Road Lit RPG progression fantasy oriented Discords, and like never really found my place. Something or other would happen, turn me off. Nothing against those Discords or servers or anything like that, but it's just like, yeah, it's a cool place, but it's not really for me. And then I found Immersive Inc. and I'm like, okay, these
Cozy.
are my people. All right.
Yeah, nice and cozy. Yeah, that's really cool. Like, I thought your story was just so interesting. Like your actual story, Project Tartarus, and your story as a writer. But I wanted to know more about you. Like, what actually started your writing journey? You said that you were publishing before, but under a different pen name, which is totally fine. But how did you get your start?
So I've been writing for over 20 years now.
Wow, okay.
And I've been writing ever since I was a kid. I've always been very interested in story and always trying to learn how to write stories better and create stories. A lot of books were very formative for me growing up, a lot of fantasy books especially. So I was always interested in fantasy. I always wanted to write fantasy, and I was so captivated by all these different types of stories that I read. And then as I got older, I started branching out into different types of fantasy. And then back in 2016, 2017 era, when I was in college, I found Lit RPG. I actually found it through Alaron Kong's series, The Land. And I listened to it on Audible, and I had never heard a book like that before. And I had the rose-colored glasses, and so any flaws in this telling of it and the content, anything else like that, I was able to kind of gloss over that because I was so enraptured by the world and the mechanics and everything else and how it all worked, and I was just blown away, and I'd never heard anything like that before. And so I finished out that series, listened to it a couple times because Nick Podell is just a phenomenal narrator, and he absolutely enhances everything he touches. But on additional listens, some of the glasses came off, and I started to notice some issues I had with either the telling or the content or the mechanics, and things like that. And I started to branch out to other lit RPGs. Still didn't know about Royal Road at this point in time. And so I was picking up other books on Audible. I was listening to them, and I was like, "Yeah, this is kind of good. It doesn't quite hit the same way that first one did."
Yep.
And like everything I read, I started having like little issues with. Like, there's something that's keeping me from loving this, and like I don't want that to happen. I want a story that I can just absolutely love. And eventually, I got to the point where I was just. I really think I can do this. I think I can write a story like this. And so I started thinking, I started planning. I was like, okay, what do I want to write about? What do I want it to say? I've always loved Greek mythology. I've always loved stories like that, and not just what is being told, but the way it's being told. And in a lot of ways, those ancient Greek story writers and playwrights and philosophers were kind of some of the original storytellers of Western style storytelling.
What we have available to us, right?
Yes, absolutely. And so I wanted to learn from them and pay a little bit of homage in a way that I could by taking something ancient from like 6 to 8,000 years ago writings and pair it with something that came out 10 years ago, or was popularized 10 years ago rather, and kind of mix something ancient with something modern. And that gave me the idea for Project Tartarus and how I've been progressing it and building out that world.
That's really cool. I actually do want to ask you something a little bit off topic. So I know you're a huge fan of Greek mythology and just like kind of like mythos style writing, I always like to call it, or stories. If you were to recommend like a crash course for people, so if they wanted to read, in a year, some of your favorite Greek style stories or some of those like old school stories, what would you recommend?
Ooh. That is an interesting question, and I am now regretting I don't know more classics to be able to point people at. So I would say I really enjoyed the Odyssey, and the Odyssey is told in a really interesting way because it plays with two things specifically. It plays with time and temporal storytelling because much of the Odyssey is actually Odysseus telling his story to other people inside of the story. And so it jumps around in time of like what has already happened, what is present, what is going on future. And then the other thing it plays with, without really tipping its hand to the reader, unless you already kind of know who Odysseus is, it's an unreliable narrator.
Oh, everybody's a no. Yeah, exactly. I get that a lot in more modern stuff. Like, have you ever read Empire of Silence?
I have not.
Oh, it's super similar. I think you would really like it actually because it pulls on that theme and it's clearly inspired by the Odyssey.
That's excellent. I'm going to have to write that down.
It's great.
But if you know anything about Odysseus, you know that he's very tricksy, he's very cunning, he's very wily. He's blessed by Athena. He's like the only person Athena actually likes who lies, because everyone else, you lie to a goddess, you get smitten. Odysseus, he lies to Athena, and she's like, how clever of you. Like Odysseus, right down to his namesake, means like the hated one. He's a little bit of a bastard. Nobody liked him back in the day because he was so tricksy and didn't fight honorably. And so most of the story is coming from him. He is telling it to other people. So he is the unreliable narrator when he's relaying all this story. So did things actually happen the way he says they did? Probably not. How did they actually happen? You don't know.
You just gotta, you gotta read between the lines a little bit.
Yeah, you gotta read between the lines, and you gotta kind of take it for what it is, of someone potentially embellishing some of their exploits.
Yeah, I think the Odyssey is a great recommendation. What about philosophers? Because I know you're a philosophy fan too. What are your? Are you like a Plato guy?
So I do like Plato. I do like Aristotle as well, what we get to see of him. And then some of the Socratic writings
Yeah.
that I believe Plato wrote down all of Socrates' writings because Socrates hated the concept of writing. If I'm remembering correctly, he was against it because he wanted to be able to make his arguments in person and in front of a crowd. And he felt that he couldn't do that with words because there's no back and forth with words. They're just written and dead, and they can't be changed or modified. And so if he had had his way, we probably never would have heard of his name. But his students decided that they were going to embrace this new concept called writing, and they were going to take everything down, and they were going to write down his arguments and his words and pass them off. Whether or not they're actually his words, that's for a scholar to determine. I'm not a scholar. I'm just an interested party. But I have a big book on Greek philosophy, and it has been a wonderful read of it's just a big consolidated book of it. It's not anything special.
Is it that giant red one that's like the completed work of Plato that everybody, like, people get in we call it university up here? It's like a giant red book of Plato that you read like 50 pages of.
It's not that one. I'd have to go grab it.
Yeah.
I think it wraps philosophy and mythology together, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's like the first half of the book is all like different philosophies, and then the second half of the book is like different mythologies.
Yeah. That's no. I could tell. I could tell that with your writing, especially. I could tell you really like the ancients. I can tell you really like things like the Odyssey. You clearly like Greek mythology.
Yes.
What about modern fantasy? I guess more modern. What are some of your favorite, not even lit RPG, your favorite kind of fantasy books that you read when you were growing up?
So let's see. Fantasy books I read growing
Even
up.
sci-fi, you know?
So Brandon Mull's Fablehaven series is a phenomenal read for anyone who has not had the pleasure. Effectively, two kids go to their grandparents' house, their grandfather's house, and it turns out their grandfather runs like a magical reserve for a bunch of different fae-like creatures.
Very cool.
And so imagine like the best national forest, national park that you could have gone to as a kid, and everything in it is just chock full of magic stuff.
Very cool. Teddy Roosevelt would be happy.
Yeah, and it's just a phenomenal read. It's got great prose. It's got great story. Aragon was big growing up. I was homeschooled as a kid, and so
Really surprising.
So Aragon was held up as kind of the like, hey, he wrote this when he was 15 and he got it published. And of course, I was a kid. I didn't know about the connections that he had into the industry, which was a large reason why he got published. But I really loved the series. I loved all 4 books. I even liked the ending, which I know a lot of people hated the ending. They have XYZ reasons that they didn't like it, which I'm not going to spoil it here in case anyone wants to go read it that hasn't. But a lot of people didn't like the ending. I actually did like the ending. I thought it was a good ending, and it made sense to me. So I don't know. Maybe
I'll be honest. I read all of them, and I don't remember the ending. I don't. It's been so long since I read Aragon.
Well, it's worth a reread, but
Yeah. Is it actually worth a reread?
I mean, if you're interested in writing something dragons, then probably it would be worth it, just to see the different ideas. I'm always deeply impressed by any author who understands linguistics enough to be able to make a conlang.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. The ancient language in the Aragon series is a real conlang that he created as a teenager.
That's kind of crazy, actually.
So I'm always deeply impressed because I barely have the mental capacity to understand English, let alone really create my own other language.
No, I think your writing is great. The new thing that you sent me to is fantastic. I was like, oh my god.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, that's really cool. So you like the more modern stuff too. Do you have any other recommendations besides Aragon? I'm sorry, I wanted you to repeat that, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You said it was the Mulberry series?
Brandon Mull, Fablehaven.
Fablehaven. Let me write that down.
I believe that's the title of the first book.
Fablehaven. I had some similar experiences. Where I was like, wow, I never heard anything like this. Funny story. The first lit RPG I actually listened to was audiobook as well. It was He Who Fights with Monsters, and it was
nice.
so new to me that like I had no idea what was going on. I dropped it because I was like, I don't. I dropped it in the first like 300 words because I just had no clue. I couldn't even understand what was happening. Since then, I've reread it and re-listened to it. I love it, obviously, but it was just like such a. I always felt lit RPG was a little bit hard to bring in new readers. Do you have any thoughts about that, like for new readers coming into lit RPG?
So I do think that the genre runs a little bit of a risk of writing for an echo chamber. And so, funnily enough, this is actually something that was common in ancient times with the writers who wrote for Greek mythology. Is they don't explain a lot of things because they assume that their audience already knows what is going on or what is the ramifications of something that is being happened. They make a lot of assumptions of audience knowledge level. And because of that, coming from an outside perspective, it can be hard to break into. I've been doing my best to expand my horizons with lit RPG and trying to branch out more, and especially branching out into smaller books and series. And something that I've noticed is that a lot of them rely on the idea of everyone who's reading this story already knows what they're talking about, and like already knows the concepts, already knows everything. Like when they say system, they that is already understood what they mean. And like when they say prompts and notifications and like attributes, without actually explaining what any of those are in story, on the assumption that everyone who's reading it already knows. And to an extent you can do that, but what happens when you do that is you create a piece of media that is effectively blocked from the larger audience. So what was important to me was I wanted to create a piece of media that uses these different terminologies that have become standard within the space, but I wanted to explain them in such a way that someone who has never played a video game, not interested in video games, could pick it up and understand what is going on.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with your opinion, honestly. I feel like I've recommended some lit RPG to friends, and they get back to me after 2 days, and they're like, "What is even happening?" I can't even wrap my head around like these concepts. I've had some luck with Dungeon Crawler Carl, honestly. Even my partner read your story too, Erebus. Yeah, they loved it. They thought it was awesome because you explained things well. But yeah, it's just I totally agree with you that it runs the risk of people not really being able to follow the story. That kind of brings me to my next question. So you write pretty quickly. It sounds like you had 2 books written before you even published on Amazon. Is that right?
Effectively, yes. Book 2 wasn't polished to release, but it was completely drafted, and I was in the process of editing it when Book 1 wrapped up and actually published. So by the time Book 1 published, Book 2 was just needing to put the finishing touches on it. By the time Book 2 published, Book 3, I only had a little bit left to go, and I am quickly working through all of the stuff that I had ready, because once Book 3 publishes, which will hopefully be sometime in the next couple months, I've got to get Book 4 ready. But I've just started writing Book 4 within the last month.
Awesome. How long is the series going to go for?
I reckon it's going to go for about 6 or 7 books. I don't. So my writing process. We've got discovery writers and we have plotters, and so I tend to fall more on the pantsing, the discovery side of writing.
Surprising. That's actually surprising.
But the way I do it is that, so I've tried to plot out a ton before, and what happens is I'll plot out a whole bunch of very specific details, and then by the time it's time to actually sit down and write, I'm bored. Because in my head I've already explored the story, even though I haven't actually written it out in proper long form. I'm bored. I'm too close to it. I've already explored those things in my head and in my profiling. So what I do instead now is I will have milestones. I will have touch points of things that I want to hit on at some point throughout the story.
Okay.
And I usually have an ending in mind that I'm writing toward.
Interesting. So you write the ending first.
I don't write it first, but I have it in mind.
Okay.
So I do write linearly. So it's start at A and write to B. And I have the touch points, like the little breadcrumbs along the path. And so how I get between each milestone, each touch point, varies drastically. But when it comes, but by the end of it, you can kind of see the line that everything went, and you can see the direction things are going. And then the thing that I like the ability to do, which I have the opportunity to do in traditional publishing on Amazon, that you don't really have many options to do on long form web novels like Royal Road, those kinds of platforms, is I like to then go back to the beginning and, well, one, do like 5 or 6 draft edits and runs and clean everything up and make sure everything looks pretty, but also go in and add foreshadowing and add various events. Sometimes the subconscious mind will do that anyway. If you know where you're going, your subconscious mind will throw something in there, and then it turns out when you go back to it, it's like, oh, well, I foreshadowed that and I don't even remember doing that.
I did a pretty good job, actually.
Yeah, it's like, maybe I am pretty good at this whole writing thing.
Sarah Streams was telling me that basically they take a brick and they just beat the reader over the head with it with their foreshadowing.
Just like, sometimes that's necessary.
I told you it was coming.
Yeah, but a lot of the time, like, I have to go back in and I have to like purposely put in something or purposely nod towards something, so that way when there's a reveal later, it's not out of left field.
Okay, so you're doing pantsing, but you have your milestones. How much are you writing, like, a week?
It varies week by week, and so usually on a given day, if I have time to write, I try to get between 1,000 and 2,000 words done. Mm-hmm. There are many days where I'm not able to get anything written, just because of life or other stuff going on. I think compared to a traditional sphere, looking at traditional fantasy authors and what they write, what they're able to produce, I think I'm on track with a vast majority of them. And then we get into the crazy, wacky world of progression fantasy, and I see people who are writing like 10,000 words a day.
It's ridiculous.
And like 50,000 words a week, and like basically doing a whole write-a-thon in like a weekend. And I look at them and I am incredibly impressed, and I know that I could never do that, not with the way my process and my brain and even my fingers work.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like pantsers just have a tougher time of hitting those word marks. Like maybe the people that are planning everything out, they know exactly where they're going, so they're just like filling in the space. But it's a lot more upfront investment, maybe. I'm not really sure. I'm still experimenting with both. But are you open to like trying out different processes, or you think you have your process pretty hammered in?
I think my process has mostly been reinforced by trial and error of what works for me. So I used to, back maybe 12 years ago when I was writing, I used to be very much an edit as I go writer. And so like I would, write a few lines, and then I would read back over those lines, and I would tweak this, maybe remove that, maybe I didn't like the way that sounded. And then once I was happy with it, okay, I go on to the next few lines, next paragraph, and then repeat ad nauseum and do the same thing. And what happened was I would get maybe 400 or 500 words a day after hours of writing. And then by the time it was time to go back around and actually look at things to edit, I was like, I'm not really a fan of this. And I would end up taking out whole sections. And it killed any momentum to have to write, because I'm very much a believer in, like, there's effectively two sides of your brain, right? You got your left brain, you got your right brain. So you have a creative side and you have an analytical side. And editing comes from an analytical side. You're looking at words, you're looking at sound, you're looking at how those things come together to create story. But when you are in the process of writing and drafting, that is the creative side. You shouldn't be focused on process. You shouldn't be focused on how things sound, how things fit together at that point. Your job at that point is to get words on the page. You can go back and analyze it later, but don't kill your momentum by trying to swap between the different sides of your brain. Focus on writing, focus on creating for a period of time, and then go back and focus on editing it at a later period of time.
Totally agree. Do you feel like you enjoy the editing process? Because I know a lot of writers like really struggle with it. Because I'm part of that mentorship. I was part of that mentorship program with Saga Streams, and a lot of people read my stuff and were giving me edits, and I found it honestly way more exhausting than writing.
It can be more exhausting than writing, absolutely. I personally do enjoy the process because in some of my master's courses for writing
Mhm.
that I've been taking, one of the ways that they try to package it to you is don't think of it as editing so much as think of it as revision. And what is revision if not to see again? And so you are taking your story as it initially was put out, and then you are reproducing it in a way that makes the original story you wanted to tell come forward and sing and really show on the page.
Yeah.
And so I try to approach editing with a mindset of what was the message that I was initially trying to say? What was the story I was trying to tell? And how can I help that come through better?
Mm.
And so I look at it from a messaging standpoint of like, is this the story I was trying to tell? Of things that happen content wise, does this come across the way that I want it to come across? And then from a packaging perspective, like, are there repeated words? Are there repeated phrases?
Yeah.
Does the sentence make sense? Does it sound okay? Is there too much alliteration? Is there not enough? Is there too much repetition? Is there not enough? And then using the different tools, the writer toolbox, to figure out how I want to tell that story.
Yeah, here's an interesting one. Do you feel like some stories can be over edited?
I would say yes. And I don't necessarily think it is an over editing issue, but I think it is a editing to remove voice issue. And
Okay.
so I do not use grammar software when I write. I don't even use grammar software when I edit. I use spell check, and that is it.
You're using what are you using? Obsidian or Microsoft Word or
I write on Word. I do everything on Word.
yeah.
I use Word spell check, and I have actually gone in and disabled all other forms of grammar checks.
Yeah, because it's pretty heavy.
And it is pretty heavy. But my thought process was like, I have read grammar, I have studied grammar, I know what I am trying to say. I'm going to say it in the way that I want to say it, and I don't want a little squiggly blue line to tell me that something could be more concise.
Hmm.
I will figure out later if it needs to be more concise, but I want to make the decision. I want to have that authority as the writer, as the author, to be able to say this was a conscious decision to write this in this way. These are my lines. And this is not meant to be a dig on anyone who does use grammar software like Grammarly or like Pro Writing Aid or like Hemingway. But the issue is that all of those software lack nuance and context. They don't know what you are trying to say as a writer. They are offering up suggestions based on large amounts of data that have been implanted into their systems that they've been trained on, that they said most people who say this are trying to say this.
Hmm.
A large portion of the time, those softwares are geared towards professional writing, not professional story writing. Professional, this is an email, you need to make this more succinct. You don't need to say this. You say this in an email to make your meaning clear.
More corporate communication style writing, not
Exactly.
storytelling.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so if folks rely too heavily on these softwares to clean up their grammar, and they're not going in with an analytical mind of, do I really need to accept this or do I not? And do I want to keep things the way they are?
Hmm.
Then what they run the risk of is their writing starting to sound a little robotic and samey, because the software is going to make the writing sound like the software.
I absolutely agree.
And
There's a very specific example comes to my brain. Like a lot of authors I've noticed recently, because I do it, is they'll do the double and. They'll do like the grass was green and cold and wet, like all in one sentence, and it reads really nice if it's done well. But grammar software would hate that.
Yes, absolutely. And so I've used that same thing, but always use it for effect. And so like when you're getting into the revision process, you have to think, what effect is this going to have on the reader? What effect do I want to have it on the reader? like I am all for breaking rules in writing.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of rules in writing are simply guidelines, but the caveat there is you have to know a rule in order to break it. You can't create a masterpiece on accident, because then it's not a masterpiece. It's
Yeah.
just an accident that happened to work out. You can't replicate that if it's an accident. So like, I've always been an advocate of know the rules, learn the rules, and break them with intent.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's you. You also mentioned that you are doing your master's. You're doing your master's in what?
I'm getting a master's of fine arts in writing. I'm hoping at some point in the next few years I'll be able to go in and become a university professor,
Awesome.
teaching writing at the college level, and hopefully be able to use some of the craft and techniques that I've learned along the way and along my path to be able to inspire the next generation of writers and help them elevate their game.
That's
And
great. That's awesome. Yeah. What's that like? What's a master's like? And I'm asking this selfishly because my new job might be paying for my master's. So like, I'm like, am I going to get a master's in creative writing?
So I'm getting my degree through Lindenwood University,
Okay.
which is based out of Missouri, and they are phenomenal so far. It is a hefty master's program. Most masters in the United States tend to be around 30 credit hours. This one is 48. And 39 of those are elective courses within the writing sphere. So like anything that has a particular prefix for the class, I can pick up that class if it's available, and it will count towards my master's. And so I've been very blessed in that I've had a huge swath of classes I can choose from. And so I can kind of cherry pick the things that I'm interested in and the things that I want to learn how to write better and those kind of craft techniques. And it has been a lot of reading, various different craft books, along with actually some writing philosophy books.
Oh, interesting. Writing philosophy, like philosophy of
Philosophy of writing, what it means to be a writer,
Oh, cool.
what responsibilities a writer has. And so, for example, one of the responsibilities that I read in a philosophy book about writing that I agreed with and now I hold is if you are going to write in a genre, you have a responsibility to be knowledgeable in the genre that you are writing. And so like I wanted to write lit RPG. When I started writing Project Tartarus, I had not read a lot of the very famous books that were in this genre. I was introduced through The Land. I didn't even hear about Dungeon Crawler Carl until like 3 years ago.
Wow. Okay, fair enough.
And so I started hearing about all these other big books. I started like searching out these communities that were really interested in these stories like this. So I read Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've started doing kind of a first book run of a lot of the greatest hits of lit RPG.
Yep.
So Hugh Fights with Monsters, Randomly Ghost Hound, Defiance of the Fall is still on my list. Not 100% if that's actually a lit RPG or just progression fantasy. I think it's kind of both.
Yeah, it's both.
It's both. So I've done first books of a lot of those, and just to know what is popular in the genre, what are people reading and writing about in the genre, because those are the breakout successes that are going to spawn a lot of copycats. And so a lot of people are going to write because they read those books and they were inspired by it, and they want to write a similar story, and it kind of trickles down from there. And so like, okay, if I'm going to write in this genre, I need to know what is this genre, first of all. I need to know what people are reading it for, why are they reading it, and what they like, in order to be able to write things that people are going to like and going to want to read.
Yeah. No. Side question: do any of your professors or teachers know about the lit RPG space? Because kind of taking over a little bit.
I don't think so.
Really?
I haven't talked to a lot of them directly about it. I've mentioned it a little bit in some conversations about those kind of spaces, those kind of genres, but so far I haven't seen anyone kind of latch onto it and be like, oh yeah, I love this genre, I read it all the time, or I know somebody who's obsessed with it. So far it's mostly been like, oh, That's interesting. I've never heard of that before.
It's like,
And
oh, have
then
you heard about Primal Hunter? They're like, what are you reading?
yeah, exactly. And then the interesting thing I think about this space, the progression fantasy lit RPG space, compared to a traditional publishing space, is that the process is almost completely backwards.
What do you mean?
So in progression fantasy, inland RPG, if you want to get published through one of the indie publishers in this space, you pretty much have to post your work online first and then see what the audience response is to it. And then based on how they react to it, how many followers you get, etc., that improves your bargaining standpoint for trying to get a deal with a publishing company to then go to print.
Absolutely, yeah.
In a traditional publishing space, you do not want your work anywhere online before the publisher publishes it.
So interesting, though. Like, it feels like it's flipping.
It might be flipping, but largely what I've seen being in that space for so long is that people will spend years, not exaggeration, they will spend years querying agents.
Yeah.
To find an agent who likes their work enough that they think that it is a good bet for that agent to spend their time and money on to connect with publishers on their behalf, to then find a publisher to sign that book, and then after everything is signed and everything is good, it usually still takes 1 to 2 years-ish for that book to then come out and be published.
Yeah, that's
and then,
so long.
And it can take anywhere from 1 to 2 years, pretty much at a minimum, of finding an agent to getting publisher, to over a decade. I can't tell you how many posts I have seen in the writing sphere on Twitter and X and stuff that folks are posting their success stories of, I never gave up on my book. I was writing it it took me 5 years, 10 years to write it. I was querying agents, and I got 300 rejections from agents. But after 12 years, someone finally said yes. And they're pitching it as a success story. And don't get me wrong, I am jazzed that they were able to get their story picked up, but like 5 years to write it, 12 years to get an agent, still haven't even found a publisher for it yet. Like that's not really a great success.
Yeah, and then you hear
like it's phenomenal for getting your foot in the door and starting it and being a no-name debut author. Congratulations, you found success. Maybe you will be able to start getting your foot in the door at other places, but that took you over a decade to do it, and that's not uncommon.
And then we hear lit RPG people, and they're dropping stories that don't have 1,000 followers.
Yes.
Yeah. Crazy.
And you get into this space, and it's like if you don't have 500 followers at least, like, we're not even going to look at you. If you don't have 2,000 followers, we're not really going to be interested. And that varies heavily between what company you're looking at and which company you're going for. But the attitude towards publication prior to official publication is just completely different.
Yeah.
Because so many of the big five, unless you're Dungeon Crawler Carl, they will not touch you if your work has been published before.
What do you mean by that?
So a lot of publishers, if they're looking at new authors that are untested, unproven, because it's business. A lot of it is, they want sure bets, or they want some sort of guarantee of return on investment. And so debut authors are a lot of risk because they don't have name recognition, they don't have guaranteed sales, they don't have a set audience, or a pre-established audience. And so for a lot of them, they take a lot of great pride in being the first published for an author. If that story is available anywhere else, even if it's on an online website like Royal Road, even if it's not been published for money, they will not want to touch it.
So interesting.
In fact, I was talking with some of my university professors about this, specifically about one of the stories I'm writing for After Project Tartars, because I'm intending to use that as my thesis.
This is the one you sent me?
Yes.
Fantastic. So good, by the way.
Thank you. And I had questions because I wanted to know if, like, hey, I'm on track to graduate in 2027 and get my degree. The thesis is the capstone of the master's program. And so I wanted to use this story for my thesis, but I wanted to know, like, are there restrictions? Am I allowed to put it anywhere else before I go on, because I didn't want like the writing software or something to pick it up and it's like, oh, well, this is clearly academic dishonesty and plagiarism because the story you just submitted is actually available online. We found it. And so I wanted to make sure that there wasn't going to be any problems with that. And they were like, yeah, we have absolutely no problems with that. The only issue that might come, or like the only thing you have to worry about is, does it meet our like length guidelines, which it absolutely does.
Yeah.
Even at this point, 2 years prior to when I'm actually going to need it. But
what are the length requirements? I'm just curious.
It was 50 pages of original work.
Oh, you can crack that out, no problem. That's like,
I'm already past that.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah, we're talking about Royal Road writers now. Oh, that's so funny.
And so the doctor who was in charge of the thesis program, I was talking with him, and he was kind of warning me a little bit. He's like, hey, just want to let you know, if you publish it online, like publishers aren't going to be really interested in picking it up. And like we being the school does not even keep a repository of like their previous students' theses because some publishers might consider that like published previously or previously available. And so like they don't even keep a database of prior students' theses on the off chance that might hurt a student's ability to get that story published at a later date.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just it's wild, the night and day difference between traditional publishing, which again, I should caveat my statements on that that I have never been traditionally published. I'm only speaking to my anecdotal experience being in those communities, looking into that situation. But I have not had personal dealings with publishers myself.
Yeah, and it's so weird because like we're in our own echo chambers too, because we're in the Discord, Royal Road, Reddit space, and self-publishing space. So maybe like obviously we're going to get a little defensive if we hear, or at least I do, when I hear things like, oh, publishers won't even look at a story that's online. I hope that'll change in the future, just because the way that things are going for a lot of these sites. Like Royal Road obviously is our site that we frequent the most, but there's other sites like Novelizing that are starting off. There's Scribble Hub. There's the other ones that a lot of authors like get their start on there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see. That's interesting. I actually do want. I want to circle back to the. Oh my god, I can't believe I just said circle back. I can't believe so corporate. I wanted to ask you about some of the other writer responsibilities, not necessarily maybe what you believe, but what are some of the ideas that people are writing about what a responsibility of a writer has?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember readings now that I did about a year ago.
Oh yeah, no worries.
So I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a writer responsibility, but one of the philosophy things that I really liked that somebody mentioned was when you write a story, you should have 3 priorities. Write for the story, write for yourself, write for your audience.
Cool.
And what it means by that is when you write for the story, you write what is best for the story. And you write, first and foremost, will this make the story better, stronger, say what I wanted it to say, etc. Next, you write for yourself. You include things that you wanted to read, what fulfills you as a person and as a writer in the space. And then third, you write for your audience and knowing what they're going to want and what their expectations are and everything else. And that resonated with me because if you're on Reddit for any long period of time, one of the most common questions that pops up, and this pops up on Twitter and Blue Sky and everywhere else that there's social media as well, is, am I allowed to do XYZ? Can I do XYZ? And my initial response, my gut instinct is like, who's saying you can't?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think you are not allowed? Who is the table, the board that says this is allowed in writing and this is not allowed in writing? Like,
the board of governors of writing, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, go for it. If you think you can do it, if you really think you can pull it off, go for it. And if you think you can't pull it off, maybe shelve it. Maybe get some practice elsewhere and come back to it when you do think you have the chops to pull it off.
Totally agree. Yeah, and sorry for going back so far because
No
we were
problem.
way past. It just sounds so interesting. Like when we're talking, you're telling me a little bit about these courses and the experience, and it just sounds really cool. Would you recommend like a master's in creative writing for people? Because I know a lot of people like to take courses. A lot of people like to learn constantly. Which is it something you would recommend to somebody if they could afford it?
Hmm. So I would recommend master's courses to people on a few conditions. One, if it is within your time and budget to be able to pursue a master's degree, and writing is something that you really care about, and you want to learn technical craft, and you want to get better, and you want to push yourself in new directions and try new things, then yes, absolutely. I think that a writing degree would be very helpful in doing that.
Mm.
If you want to pursue a writing degree because you think it's going to teach you the tricks of the trade to become the next Brandon Sanderson and make $1 billion and start your own companies and stuff, no,
Yeah.
that's he is an outlier amongst outliers. He can do whatever he wants because he is the audience and all the teams in the
He's the
background that
goat right
help
now.
prop
He's
him
the
up.
goat.
Yeah,
Literally the goat. Probably
like
he's top three of all time. Probably.
probably at least success wise.
Yeah.
And so like no one is going to follow a path, follow a preset path, and become the next outlier. You are going to have to go off the beaten path at some point in order to find your niche and find what makes you super popular.
Hmm.
But if you're interested in learning new things, and you have the time and the money and the wherewithal to go do that, I would say absolutely go do that. It is invaluable to be able to have a professor who you can ask questions to, who will read your writing and give you advice, who will give you recommendations of books to read based on things that you write. And they're like, oh, I think that you would actually really appreciate this. You should go read this. And it will teach you, I don't know, how to be a better writer, how to do scene work better, how to do character work better. And you can take all these little aspects of writing out, and they will help you build and strengthen those until you become a better writer.
Absolutely, totally agree. And for those of you that can't afford that, there's obviously resources online like Brandon Sanderson's course for writing. I'm actually curious because it's just running right now as we're recording this, but I'm super curious to see what he has to say now because it's been 3 years since he's released one, 3 or 4 years, about marketing yourself. So I actually do want to ask you about that too, Erebus, is how do you feel about marketing yourself as a self-published writer? Like, how do you go about it? What are some tactics that have worked for you? What do you think like doesn't work and is maybe not worth the time?
So marketing is vitally important to self-publishing. Books live and die by their marketing. If no one has ever heard of it, no one is going to be reading it.
Yeah.
And that is the really even the harder hill to climb than just finishing the book, which is already a massive hill to climb and a huge accomplishment for anyone who has actually just finished a novel. If no one knows about your work, it's not going to sell copies. And that was the issue that I ran into when I published back in last summer. Was great. I hit the publish button. The book's out there. It's got a cover. It's got a narrator. It's on Audible. Nobody knows who the hell I am.
Yeah, you're like, okay,
so,
where's the money?
Exactly. And like, I wasn't expecting it to be a breakout success, but I wanted to put the book out there, and what I largely got back was crickets. And like, it was understandable. I hadn't done good enough marketing of getting my name out there, getting the name recognition, that if someone like even thinks Greek mythology lit RPG, they'll think of me. I hadn't put the legwork in for that, and so I went back and I started belatedly putting in more legwork. I've gotten more involved in the Reddit. I found the Discords. I started getting involved in there, talking to folks there. Got good advice from folks who were in the trade, Phoebe, Fid, Weaver. And I've been doing my best to share my experiences, share my thoughts, and be a hopefully helpful and constructive voice in the space.
Definitely. Yeah, that's without question, dude.
Partial.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No. That's without question. You're definitely a helpful voice in the space. Like, I see you chatting in the Discord and on Reddit. I'm like, Erebus is so well articulated. My goodness. It's like,
Like there's two parts to that. One is I genuinely want to help folks, especially when they have like craft questions or
yeah.
technical questions, because I love talking shop about writing. I love talking about like the way that stories are crafted and the different ways that stories can be crafted and what it means to tell a story in a certain way. And I love helping folks out with that and brainstorming with them. And then on the other side of it, selfishly, like I want to have that name recognition out there. I want people to like see my name and be like, oh, I know that guy. I've talked to him before. I've read his first book and it was really interesting. Maybe I'll check out what new book he has coming out. And it really is equal parts, like or some days less equal than others, of like I really do want to help and put back into this community, which has given me so many wonderful stories. And also I want to be a success story. I want to be a full-time author. I want to be able to go to a con like Dragon Con or Lit RPG Con and then be on a panel and have folks, strangers, complete strangers I've never talked to, like have read and loved my books and want to ask me questions about it and hounding me night and day, when's the next one coming out. Like I want that to happen. And so I got to put in the work for it. And there's work on the marketing side of that, and there's work on the writing side of that. As far as marketing strategies go, there are free resources, which is effectively social media, and there are paid resources, which is paid ads, whether it's on Royal Road, whether it's on Amazon, whether it's on Facebook, things like that. Free resources are incredibly effective. Talking on social media, interacting with folks on social media, it really builds up the person behind the name. So you if you don't think you have a reputation in the space, you're wrong, because someone somewhere is going to remember your name, and they're going to remember if you were nice to them or if you were a dick to them. Absolutely. And they're going to tell somebody else about it. So I am always very careful of how I interact with others, especially in an online space, because I don't want a bad day to turn into, okay, well, now this guy's just an asshole. And so I've always tried to be uplifting, constructive, and kind when I'm dealing with stuff, especially if something needs a bit of extra help. I've been there. I've definitely written horrible things before and then got absolutely torn to shreds about it and wanted to put the pen down. And like I don't want to be that for anybody else. So if someone is legitimately coming to me and was like, can you please read this and give me feedback on it, like I will give honest feedback, but I will do it with kindness. And I will do it with suggestions of what could make something better, or suggestions of, hey, you should try this technique, I think it will help you out in this aspect, or you should go read this book, I think it will help you out with trying to do character work or trying to do scene work.
That's really good advice. So it's basically all the avenues. You have to do social media. You have to get in the community. You have to build you're not building a persona. You're being yourself. But
yes,
like you have to be involved in the community if you want the community to give back to you.
Yes, you get out what you put in. And when it comes to the paid aspect of that, I'm a little reluctant to give a full guideline because everything is going to be so individualized based on your situation, but and especially when money is involved. I will say that ads on Royal Road are some of the best bang for your buck I have ever seen in an advertising space. Really, because the way that Amazon does it and the way that a lot of websites do it is they charge per click. So it's not about however many impressions it gets. It's how many people are actually clicking on your ad, and that's what drives the numbers up. So, for example, you can get a was it a 300,000 something impression Royal Road ad for like $50 ish. Or maybe a little bit more now or something like that. But and out of that, if you have over a 1% click ratio, CTR, then you'll be getting like over 3,000 clicks off of that. 3,000 clicks on Amazon would cost me over $3,000.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so
like the keywords on Amazon are very expensive, and if somebody clicks on that ad, then it charges it. And so like a lot of the keywords, especially for like lit RPG stuff, they're like with somewhere between like 40 cents to $1.50.
Oh my goodness.
And so if I have 3,000 people who click on an Amazon ad, all of a sudden I'm out probably $3,000, maybe a little bit less, probably
Oh
a bit more.
gosh.
And then there's no guarantee that anyone who clicked on the ad is actually going to buy the book.
Oh, it's so painful. $3,000 for 3,000 clicks, like that's, or and
so
potentially no sales, right? Well, sales,
yeah.
but.
And so you can put limiting factors on that. You can say like, all right, I'm going to budget, or I'm going to set it so it's only going to budget X number of dollars a day. Set it so it can't go over that, or it can go over that, but only by a little bit. And then if it runs over, then like, okay, it just pauses your campaign until the next day.
Yeah, I did some experimenting with cost per leads on Facebook, and I had some great success. But cost per leads are different than cost per click, and it's because I have a newsletter, right? And it's like they're not buying anything; they're just providing me their emails. So cost per leads are great if you want to build up your newsletter. From my experience, it costs anywhere between like 60 cents and $1.25. Now I'm not making money off Saga Scribe, but if I was to do I do other newsletters, but if I was going to do a newsletter for an author, I'm just curious to see if it would work for an author on Facebook. I don't know if it would. It'd have to be like a book or free story or something.
That would be interesting. I'm not on Facebook personally. I know that there is a big lit RPG market on Facebook. There's a big Facebook group there, and I know that they're like tens of thousands strong. So it's definitely a big market. I don't like Facebook personally,
yeah, it's not a great platform.
And so maybe I'll get on there someday, but we'll see. They require a lot of data and information that I don't particularly want to give them.
You're a private person.
I am a private person.
Yeah. Do you want to speak anything about privacy about that at all? I'd love to get your thoughts about it. And if not, we can always cut this part out.
So I value my privacy. It's why I created the name Erebus Esprit. It's why I'm very reticent to share too much information about myself online. I think it's important in this day and age of information and technology to keep some things private.
Yep.
I'm not necessarily against showing my voice, showing my face, but I want to get to a point where like it's worth it to do that. I would love to go to cons and be able to meet people. I don't want to have to wear a mask or hide my face when I do that. But at the same time, there's a lot of crazies out there, and it's easier to find somebody online than it's ever been before.
It's exceptionally easy.
And that's kind of terrifying. And I've seen a lot of the world. I've learned a lot about the world, and like a little bit of privacy goes a long way. And so I try to focus more on the brand, if you will. And so I've got my little Spartan helmet icon, and that it's become my brand, that silhouette. And like you see me, you see my name, you associate it with Greek mythology, and I've kind of been keeping a little bit of that going through my stories. I've got a lot more ideas for books and stuff than just Greek mythology, than just Project Tartarus. But I do want to keep kind of that nod to where I started and where I come from.
Interesting. So what's your plans with writing? So obviously everybody wants to go full time, but let's say within the next 2 years, you want to write like 1 book, 2 books, 3 books.
So I actually made a New Year's resolution for this year that I wanted to finish 2 books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I finished a book like December 27th of last year, and I was like, well, crap, now I have to fully write 2 books.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
And so I've been working towards that. I've been working on a story that the one that we've kind of danced around for my master's. Right now, tentatively titled The Pyrrhic Paladin. And that one is kind of think of a D&D paladin placed into a Dark Souls scenario, and what that looks like, and what his motivations are for being there, and how he's going to affect what's going on overall in that world. And I thought that was a really interesting story concept, so I started writing that. And that book 1 is almost written. I've got a few more chapters and stuff I need to throw in there, and then probably go back, polish it up, and add a bit more to it. But it's February, and that one is almost done. And then I've started writing Project Tartarus Book 4, and that's very important to me. I want to finish that series before I start branching off into too many others. And so I've got to write books 4, 5, and 6. I'm about halfway done with it. And so Project Tartarus Book 4 is probably going to be my next one that I finish.
Awesome.
And I've got a third series I've started writing in spare time at work. Don't tell my boss. That is a sci-fi fantasy.
Oh, no way.
RPG.
Space opera or like on a world?
A bit of both. If you've ever played Phantasy Star Online, kind of based off that.
Okay.
Old Nintendo game. I think the original Phantasy Star was NES or something like that. They brought the original Phantasy Star back on Switch, I think. Cool. I've been playing that. And it's this like sci-fi ships and like world and stuff, but like they go to new worlds, and in Phantasy Star Online, like they've gone to this new world that's been was previously settled, colonized by like the humans and everything else, and then they just like lost contact with them, and then they went back there after like a year, and they're exploring all these ruins and fighting all these native monsters to the world that are like, what happened here? And there's like this whole big mystery of trying to figure out what happened to everybody.
Cool.
But it was one of my favorite games growing up on the GameCube, and playing it, and I wanted to write a sci fantasy because I felt like a lot of lit RPG books are either full fantasy or full sci-fi, and Phantasy Star Online is a sci fantasy. Like, you've got beam rifles and handguns, and you've also got some dude out here with a laser sword.
Yeah, exactly.
who's just going toe to toe with folks. And so I found a way to marry up like kind of your long rifle marksman type archetype character, you're in the thick of it brawler type archetype, and then a sort of magic cybernetics user.
Very cool.
To create sort of a adventurers guild type story, and I wanted to have something that was a little bit more free roamy than some of my previous novels, because I tend to have very deliberate overarching plots, and I wanted to have an overarching plot for this one, but I also really love the idea of just someone at an adventurers guild, just, you know, put the time in, getting the job done, collecting his pay, and like working towards that next social rank or whatever. And those kind of like small tiny stories, small stakes stories are really fun, I think. And so I wanted to try that in kind of a sci fantasy setting, because I've written sci-fi for school assignments before, but I've never actually tried to sit down and write a sci-fi story. And so I'm very curious to see how this works and try my hand at it.
Very cool. How are you finding it so far, writing sci-fi? Or
it is a lot of fun. I'm cheating it with sci fantasy, so there's still a lot of fantasy aspects to it. But being able to say like, oh, they took a jet class star cruiser to an intergalactic or a jet class starship to an intergalactic cruiser, and then creating like all these things, like, oh, it's so fun. And then big fan of Blade Runner and stuff like that, and so just creating a vibe for a society. And so like I've got like everything runs on neon.
No way, that's so funny.
There's all these like bright lights and stuff going on. And like I just wanted to create a like immersive environment and vibe that goes with the story that will hopefully will resonate with some readers and attract their interest.
That's science fiction is my. I love fantasy. I love lit RPGs. It's so hard because I can't even rank them all. I have such a soft spot for like space operas and like the Pulp Fiction style space operas. Yeah, where it's just ridiculous. All the characters are like way over the top. It's like probably because I was reading it when I was like really getting into writing. It's probably why I like it so much. One thing I do want to ask you, I don't know how much time you have.
I've got time.
Okay. One thing I do want to ask you is you do really well with magic systems. I've actually liked all of your magic systems, even in the new work that you shared. You also do something really interesting in Project Tartarus. how do you go about crafting magic systems? Like, do you have a process? Do you just think them through for a long time and just kind of like work through it, or do you have like a system on how you build those out?
I would say I mostly think through it and then write it down.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many times I've had an idea and I didn't write it down. It's like, oh, I'll remember that, and then surprise, I did not remember that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of thinking. Like, okay, so if this is a thing that can happen, what is a downside of it happening?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the cost here in order to be able to do this wonderful, incredible, impossible, magical thing? And it's like, okay, so we have a cost. What does society look like now that this thing is possible? And I think that's a point where a lot of world building fails, is that it was not considered what being able to do something, how that would affect and change a society.
Okay.
And there are in-universe explanations that you can give of why it wouldn't affect and change a society. Maybe the cost is too astronomical that like nobody does it that way. Maybe it's super rare, so it was never feasible to design a society off of this as an option. Like there's lots of different excuses that you can give, or reasons that you can give that everything functions the way you want it to function, but also this is possible.
Yep.
But some stories don't go that distance to make that point. And many readers deeply care about world building, like past even plot or character. They care about the world, and not having those explanations and that thought out system for it will turn away those readers.
Absolutely.
And they will get mad, get frustrated, lose interest. And but there's a fine balance there, because if your first 20 chapters of your book is all exposition and world dumping of like, this is exactly how it works, this is the first king all the way to the 50th king, and turn into like a genealogy series of so and so in the year
which some people do,
which some people do to limited success, to mixed results, I'll say. Your mileage may vary. But like that is great for the world building audience who's like, I just love this world and I want to know more about it. And I don't care if it's the history book or the phone book, just tell me more about this world. And then there's other folks who are like, please, for the love of all that is lit RPG, give me a status and make something happen.
Yes.
But I will say, as far as magic systems go, I always try to think of, and I don't always succeed, but I always try to think of, what effect will this have on the world? What is the cost of this system? And so every magic world that I've built, there's always a cost. There's always a price. All magic comes with a price. And so what happens when you bite off more than you can chew? I think that's a really interesting thing to explore. And there are a lot of lit RPGs where it's like, well, if you don't have enough mana, not enough mana for that move, you can't do it. And I think it's a lot more interesting. It doesn't work for every story, but I think it's a lot more interesting personally when it's like, okay, you can still do it, but something bad is going to happen.
Yeah, you burn your flesh, or
burn your flesh, lose your mind. Something is going to happen. There's going to be some cost for you doing this, and I think that creates a lot of interesting decision space for a character of being able to make a sacrificial choice. I am going to sacrifice some aspect of myself, or sacrifice myself, in order to do something that I think has to be done that only I can do in this moment. I think that's a really interesting decision space to get to work with as a writer.
Yeah, awesome. I actually think I just recently read A Soldier's Life, and Soldier's Life has the burn mechanic where like the veins, or the mana veins, or the aether, or whatever it is, the burns, it becomes extremely painful to use magic. So the more, like, if you overextend yourself, then it's like extremely painful. But obviously there's characters that were healers in the battlefield, and they wanted to heal everybody, so now they can like barely do magic because it's so painful, because they save so many people. I always agree that like there has to be some sort of cost. That's something that I really struggled with, honestly, when I was writing my story. It's just like I couldn't get across the mental anguish of all the spells. Couldn't do it. It was difficult to write, and it was also really difficult to. I don't think readers really liked it. So I think next story. That's a good question. I actually found one thing my partner actually said about Project Artemis was that it's very fun. How do you know any tricks? And maybe this will tie in with your masters too. Do you know any tricks of like making stories fun, or like how do you go about making stories like addictive to read?
That's really funny that you say that because some of the feedback I've gotten on book two is that it's very sad.
I mean, it's sad, but like in a good way, you know?
So I would say what is important in making a story fun is balance. So when we talk about archetypes, you can have like your straight man and your funny man.
Mm-hmm.
And to use Dungeon Crawler Carl as an example, Carl is the straight man. He is the dude who just kind of like takes everything and he's kind of serious about it, and he's not off there cracking jokes and stuff. That's Donut's job. Donut is the funny man of that duo because she's a talking cat.
Mm-hmm.
She's inherently ridiculous as a character concept, and Matt Dinneman does that really really well, of like ridiculous character concepts and then makes you care about them. And so you have to have a balance, because if it's too funny goofy all the time and you don't have someone who's a bit serious to rein it back in,
Mm-hmm.
then people stop believing in your stakes. Like the world becomes kind of wacky anime-esque,
Yeah.
and it loses that grounded sense of actions have consequence and actions have weight. So it was a really interesting balance for Arky as a character, for him to balance fish out of water with basically straight man in a crazy world. Like he will crack jokes, he will make sarcastic comments on things. It's usually about things that like a coping mechanism to deal with like whatever is going on in the moment. And there are still moments where he will get serious and it'll buckle down, and usually it's a bad time for somebody else.
Yeah.
But for a lot of it, he uses his humor as a mask. And then you have Lissa, who is his counterpart, who from a character perspective, Lissa is Arky. They have a lot of the same strengths and flaws, it just presents a little bit differently. And so that was a very interesting duo to write there, because there are two main characters to Project Tartarus. There's Arky and there's Lissa. Arky is your isekai protagonist, who's kind of a little bit like, what's the deal with this? And Lissa is a very traditional fantasy protagonist, where she's from this world, she knows what's going on, she's very capable, but the odds are just so stacked against her at any given time that like victory seems out of reach, and somehow got to find it, because giving up is not an option.
Yeah, and I like what you did with the with Arky especially. How it's like it was kind of like a blank slate when he arrives.
Yeah, so Arky is a bit of a red herring, because he is on his face the perfect opportunity for a self-insert. And then as you go along the story, he literally in Project Tartarus 1, he develops a personality. You can see a little bit come through at the beginning, but as the book goes on, you see him get more and more comfortable in being who he is while not knowing who he is. And then in book 2, he comes even more into that, learns about himself and his past, and learns different aspects of himself. And at that point, he is no longer a potential self-insert. He is a full realized character in his own right, who has his own shit to deal with.
Did you do that on purpose?
I did do that on purpose.
Set up the red herring, yeah?
So I set up the red herring purposefully, because I wanted a vector to be able to introduce the world slowly, drip feed it to the audience. And so everyone gets to learn alongside Arky. But I also wanted to make sure that he wasn't such a self-insert character that people would get upset when he makes decisions that they wouldn't. Because I always think that's an unfair and an uncharitable reading into something if you get mad at a character for not making the decision that you would make. Well, the author doesn't know you. They can't predict what you're going to pick in a certain situation. And I also don't think it's generally fair to ascribe to an author what a character does. A character is a character. They have their own mindset, their own decision calculus, and they're going to make decisions in the space. If something is incongruent with that character, then you can say like, okay, maybe that's a little ham-fisted. Maybe that needs some work and some rethinking, or at least explain the thought process better to the audience, so that they know why the character made that decision. But generally speaking, a character is a character, and they're going to make their own decisions. And I don't think it is generally very fair for an audience to expect to be able to read themselves into a character, because then they just get mad.
Yeah, and I've noticed that if you make grumpy characters or have too many grumpy characters, people get really upset on Royal Road. Like, you gotta have a big baddie. You can't just have like everybody be a big baddie. How did you find the feedback? What was it like to get immediate feedback with Royal Road? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
So I get nervous about it.
Yeah.
I'll say. I have confidence in my abilities. I have confidence in my writing skill, but the degree of separation between a Royal Road commenter and an author is paper thin. And I'm not a big fan of that. I would like a little bit more choice into seeing direct feedback, because like,
It's right on the dashboard. It's like
it's right on the dashboard. You open it
Oh.
up, your fiction on the top, your review bottom left, your comments bottom right, and it's just there. Like I said before, I try to be very constructive. I try to be very kind in how I approach things when I'm giving other people feedback. And generally, I don't give feedback unless somebody asks me to, because maybe someone just wanted to share something they were proud of, and it's kind of a jerk move to turn around and say like, "Oh, well, you could have done this better."
Yeah, like, no,
But by and large, readers do not have that hesitancy. They will say whatever is on their mind, however kind or cruel it is. And so I've been pretty lucky so far, I think, in that a lot of the responses have been very kind, very positive. There have definitely been some unkind, unpositive comments that have been left. That's nature of the beast. That's just how this industry works. If you create something, you're going to get judged on it. Not everyone's going to like what you make. It doesn't matter how good it is. And it's usually not a reflection on whoever wrote it. But you have to learn to develop that bit of thick skin of you're going to get negative feedback. I just wish that it wasn't quite so front and center on Royal Road.
Oh my goodness, it's brutal sometimes. I remember one day I woke up to like a brutal review, and then the whole thing is brutal, and then the last sentence, you know what? This writer's pretty good. I just wish they used the stories like they're practicing. And I was like, oh, you leave the one nice thing towards the very end? Like, you couldn't start with that?
Yeah. And I remember, I think my most recent review actually, which I actually got after I stubbed, or after I announced the stub, which I thought was a very interesting time to leave this particular review. He was like, this story made me so frustrated. I just couldn't understand why the main character is making the decisions he's making. He's like too stupid to live, too stupid to die. I can't help it. And then the other main character, Lissa, I really like her, but man, like stuff just does not go right for her. Like she just has the most horrible time. I'm so frustrated reading this. I've just got to set it down. I'll pick it up later, maybe, and when I'm in a better mood. 4 stars.
That's so funny. At least a 4 stars though.
Yeah, and like I mean absolutely no shade to this reviewer. I'm never going to be that type of author who goes and attacks reviewers regardless of what they say. But it was just really funny to me. Of like I'm so frustrated reading this story. 4 stars. Like that's really funny.
The story's really pissing me off. Here you go. Here's 80%.
Yeah,
that's so funny. I know. I agree with you though. Yeah, it can be rough, and a lot of authors have expressed like I just wish it was a way. Then again, we don't have massive following, so I can only imagine what that's like when you're getting, 200 comments a chapter. Like, how do you even sort through those?
Yeah, I think to an extent at that point, it becomes a little bit blinding in a good way. Like if you're getting such a high volume of engagement on a story, like you don't really have to go look at it.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's getting engagement is a good sign in the first place. Like it's kind of the all press is good press. Like if you're getting 200 comments on every chapter, it doesn't matter if every single comment is negative. like that's still a lot of traffic that is being driven to your story,
Hmm.
and you don't have to go read it at that point. If you have a lot of success, you can literally hire somebody to go read through your comments for you, and like give you summarized feedback out of it that takes away the sting. Um, which I know some more famous authors who I don't want to name have done things like that. It's kind of part of the job of being a personal assistant to a writer is uh, filtering the feedback that comes through.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely
we,
agree. Yeah, I mean, Zogarth has his famous rant on Patreon about being like,
yeah,
"I'm writing this for me," and like, stop
yeah,
telling me how to write my story.
yeah, and he was warranted to say what he did. I would not have said it the same way, but I am not Zogarth, and he has no reason to listen to what I have to say.
Kind of fits Jake's personality. I know. I was like, "Oh man, that's
Yeah,
pretty." I
I,
mean,
uh,
I agree, but dang, that's harsh.
yeah, it's funny because like I've read Primal Hunter I think through like five or six, and then I read his like previously ons, and I read that, and I'm like, wow, he really does just write his stories in the same way that he writes online. Like that is a very similar writing style.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, hey, he's doing great. Good for him.
Yeah, when you have that kind of success, you can do what you want.
So, last thing, Erebus, do you have anything that you want to shout out? Anything that you want to recommend? Any last parting words?
I would like to take this opportunity to shout out a fellow author who I have been singing her praises from the rooftops to anyone who will listen. Her name is Rachel Nee Kirk. She's an Irish writer. She was one of the writers for Baldur's Gate 3. She wrote a lit RPG trilogy called Knights of Eternity. First book is called Calamity, and it is probably some of the best character writing I have seen in the genre.
Wow.
She is up there in terms of quality, and she got Andrea Parsnow to narrate it, and I am just blown away by the quality of the audiobooks. I believe the audiobook for the third book is coming out sometime this summer. Like she is just a fantastic character writer, and it's got a great plot, and it's a trilogy. It's a finished lit RPG
It's great.
series. Like how many of those are there, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's one of the disadvantages of the genre, I think. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, and but she is just some phenomenal work. Like I would put her character writing like kind of up there with Joe Abercrombie and the First Law
Wow,
trilogy. And
that's a heavy
like
praise.
it is very different genres that they
Yep.
write. She does not write grimdark, but she has just some phenomenal character writing, and then Andrea Parsnow elevates everything she touches.
Hmm.
And so would very much like to shout her out because she didn't see the success that she should have, and I I want to funnel as much stuff her way as I can because I want more books from her. Selfishly,
Awesome.
I want to see her write more books.
That's fantastic. That's it. You get one shout out. That's it. You're gonna give one shout out.
Uh, top of mind awareness. That's the one that sticks with me.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, Erebus, thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much for coming on. I don't know why I'm talking like I'm on a meeting. Oh my
Thank you so
goodness.
much for having me.
Yeah, yeah. It was so nice to hear your voice. I'm gonna stop the recording now.